Welcome to the Resilient Butterfly Podcast. My goal is to share inspiring stories of healing and recovery through many diverse approaches and models. Our guests bring incredible lived experiences, insights, and/or professional expertise, each with their own unique path. While we highlight and celebrate these stories, our intention is to inform, inspire, and demonstrate resilience and creativity. This podcast does not endorse any one approach. We believe there is more than one way to heal, and we're here to showcase the resilience and possibilities that exist. Welcome, everyone. We have today on Resilient Butterfly, Dr. John Dyben, who is the Chief Clinical Officer of Hanley Foundation in West Palm Beach, Florida. And Dr. Dyben oversees all of Hanley Center and the Headwaters clinical programs and strategically guides program evolution, ensuring the organization continues to deliver excellence in care and the highest quality patient experience. I've known Dr. Dyben for many years, at least since I think 2010. And really, there's so many qualifications that you have, Dr. Dyben. I'm going to go through a few. Bachelor of Science in Psychology, a Master of Arts in Marriage and Family Therapy, Master of Arts in Conflict Management, a Master of Science in Management, a Doctor of Health Science, and Postgraduate Studies in Psychology, Philosophy, and Religion. And a Master Certified Addictions Professional and Certified Mental Health Professional in Florida, an Internationally Certified Alcohol and Drug Counselor, and Substance Abuse Professional. So you've come highly qualified in many, many ways. But beyond that, as a person, I've always known you to have such great integrity and just passion for what you do in the world of substance abuse and mental health, and what's happening now at Hanley Foundation and what you're involved in is just so spectacular. So I want to start with that a little bit about what's going on at Hanley, some of the programs, the children's program, the Casa Flores program, what other thoughts and planning are coming about, as well as the overall the women's and men's and the Headwaters programs, family programs. I have a passion for families, so as you know. Yeah. Where would you like to begin in that regard? And then I want to go into a little bit about more on some topic on the psychology and the religion, because I know that you had got You have a degree in theology, correct? So I have some thoughts on that I want to explore with you. So let's start.
Love it. We have at least 7 hours. And the feeling of respect is obviously very mutual. We have known each other for a long time, and you just incredible work. So many things. So I've been here in July. I will have been at Hanley Center for 21 years.
Incredible.
So I've seen a lot of the different, changes and things over time. Some of the exciting things that are happening right now. You mentioned Casa Flores. For years, actually more than a decade, people have, including myself, lamented that if you're a pregnant mom and you also have addiction, there's really your choices, where you can get help is so limited. And I've lamented it for years and people that I know. But over the past year, with the Hanley Foundation coming back over the year and a half, and really, bringing the foundation and the center back together, we now have this program as part of the women's unit where we are treating pregnant moms and helping them get through the birth of the baby, and then helping them continue. So we get them before the baby's born, and we get them after, help them get completely detoxed, and then help them move on to supportive housing and whatever else they need. it is, you can imagine, you've started a program.
Right. It is a program that is just going to change generations for some families.
It's generations, right? It's enormous. And it is so, anybody who's worked in healthcare, if you start a new program in healthcare, it is, you're going to, everywhere you turn for, 2 years, there's going to be something new that you've got to fix and so it's a lot of work and a lot of pressure. And yet there are, if you come on Hanley's campus, we have babies on our campus and we moms who so these babies are born, and then rather than being taken away from their moms, we know neurodevelopmentally that the first 2 weeks are, and the bonding that happens between mother and child and parents and child, and fathers as well, is incredibly important to brain and to a person's entire life.
Right.
And when you can have an environment that's so safe that baby is not going to be taken away from mom, and instead it is going to not only can mom get healed and find recovery, but that baby gets to bond and gets to have the better chance at a full life and a better development. So that's super exciting. In our men's program, we have a Patriots initiative where we've begun to pull out. We've been treating first responders and veterans for decades. I think we've had contracts with fire departments and other first responders for longer than I've been here. But what we're really doing now is working to have times where we pull them out and pull them together in this Patriots initiative, where we not only have them engaged in the different programs, but we also give them opportunities to be with people that do what they do. It's a really interesting thing.
Yeah, I can only imagine the support that they can give each other, that if they're in another group of people that don't have that same experience, they don't have that same ability to be able to relate to them in their own recovery and healing, and be able to be vulnerable in their openness for that.
Right. And that's what they say. That's what they tell us. Some will say, the things that I see every day and deal with every day on a daily basis, I don't want to talk about that with people who don't, and sometimes it's not just because they won't understand me. Sometimes it's because I don't want to burden them with the things I see every day.
Sure.
But the other thing is that there's a sense of the needs of someone who's going to leave treatment and go back to work as a first responder, as a police officer, a firefighter, who's going back to military service. Their needs are different than those who are not. So, for example, we talk a lot about, as therapists, we'll talk about the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. One is that fight or flight mode, and one is that relax and rest and digest mode. And we do a lot in therapy to help people move into that parasympathetic relax, so that, because it's healthier for our bodies and such. Well, if you have a police officer, for example, and that person's in treatment and they're about to go back to that job, well, being able to learn to rest and digest, being able to learn to access that parasympathetic is important. But the reality is, sometimes they're going to need on a regular basis to compartmentalize. Sure. They need to be able to be in that fight or flight and to have that adrenaline, and so whereas most of us don't.
Right.
So that's just one example of
it's different than what normal people would walk through their lives with, unless they were in a tragic trauma situation themselves. But that's a one incident over days and weeks and months and years of that for first responders.
That's exactly right. So there's the Casa Flores and there's the Patriots initiative that's new. And where, I'm with you with family. Family is so important. And so there's a couple of things that are new that are happening. I will tell you, I just came from Fellowship Friday. So every Friday on this campus, there is a 30 to 40 minute where the patients who are leaving get to share their experience, strength, and hope. And every other week, is a 5-day family program here. We've had that program for many years. And on that Friday, the family members also get to share if they want. And I just came from a fellowship Friday where family members just were so grateful for the work that they got to do and the support that they get. And we've done that for years and years and years.
Yeah.
But about a year and a half ago, I got challenged and they said, you don't have a family program. What you have is an adult program. And I said, what do you mean? They said, are kids not part of the family? And it was a great point. And so you know how excited I am about it. And, we started working, I get to begin working with Jerry Moe. For those who don't know, Jerry is a legend in this field.
He's going to be on this podcast in maybe 2 weeks. We're going to air. It's recorded, so people will get to know Jerry Moe, one of the most passionate, unbelievably kind individuals that I've ever met in my life, besides you. But
well, no, hey, listen, I consider him a friend and a mentor.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful to even get the time I get with him. But he came in and Nakoa came in, and Nakoa he'll talk about that, I'm sure. But it, and we have developed this 3-day family program for children, 7 to 12. And it is an incredibly beautiful experience. And so that's another new thing.
Can you tell the audience in those 3 days some of the activities that you actually take these children through so that they have a greater understanding? They don't just come and play, and what is it that they can experience that will change their lives?
Absolutely. There are 3 main things that we look to do. One is we look to give them an understanding of addiction, because these are children who are in families that are impacted by addiction. Most adults don't know how to talk about addiction to other adults. We really don't know how to talk to our kids about addiction. And so what people think is they think if I don't talk to them about it, they're sheltered from it. But the truth is that children know something is wrong. And what they do is they create a narrative where if there's no narrative, they will create one, and the narrative will almost always say, I am to blame and I'm not safe. And so one of the first things we do is we give them the narrative that's true. We teach them about addiction in a way that is developmentally appropriate. And so it involves talking very frankly about addiction, but also letting them talk about what their experience is. And then we give that some words, right? And it's incredibly powerful. The next thing, so explaining addiction is a big part of it. The next thing is what Jerry calls opening the doors. So one of the things that happens in family systems where there's addiction is they tend to be what we call closed family systems, right? And so don't share anything outside of this family. We don't ask for help outside of this family. There's very strict rules about who can talk and who can't. So kids walk in knowing don't talk, don't trust, don't feel. And so what we do in opening the doors is give them the opportunity to create an environment where it is safe to talk, where we let them break out of that, but not just to talk because they're kids. And so we use a variety of whether it's talking or drawing, and there is a ton of play. Part of that is because when if I've got a 10-year-old, I can't tell you how many 10-year-olds walk in the door and they're really little 40-year-olds. Sure. Because they had to grow up. And so giving them the opportunity, say it's okay to be a kid. And then finally, as they understand addiction, they have really worked on expressing themselves. They have an opportunity on Sunday to tell their story to a safe adult in their life. And that is,
that must be really powerful to watch.
I've been doing, this work for over a quarter century. It has stunned me. I think nothing's going to surprise me. It is amazing how powerful this is. And what I realized is I knew this program would be a gift for the kids, but it is also a gift for the adults who participate in certain parts of the program. And so those things, the way we get through those three things where, we explain addiction, we help them understand it, we help, them open those doors and be kids and learn that it's not their fault and they can't fix it. But then we work on, you can take care of yourself. Self-care is okay. So what does self-care mean for a 7 to 12-year-old? And that's the final part of it. And this is done, like I said, there are games, there's art activities, there are activities where the kids write out their stories. But fun is a big part of it. The other thing is that there are a number of things that we do that give kids the opportunity to trust us. We never ask, and I'll never ask anyone to trust me. I only ask, am I being trustworthy?
Got it.
And it's a very, very different thing.
Sure.
And with these kids, we give them opportunities. So day one, we have a game, and we tell them if they can get to a certain score in the game, then they can do something. They can push me into the pool the next day with all my clothes on.
And we talked about that, and that you got pushed in a very cold temperature, and
I did.
And you had fun with it.
But it's a powerful experience, because what it does is it helps kids learn that it is possible for an adult to keep their word.
Sure.
It is possible to trust. And so we help them learn how do you trust, and who is okay to trust, right? So that is a program I just am so excited about. And by the way, for anybody who's listening, it is fully funded for 3 years. If you know of anybody who they don't have to be involved in Hanley, this is the coolest thing. They don't have to have anything to do with Hanley. If you have a 7 to 12-year-old who's been impacted by addiction, they can do this program with zero charge to the family.
That's incredible. I was going to ask you to talk about that. And the fact is that they can fly, a safe adult can fly with them and stay in a hotel with them, and they just bring them to the program during the day. That is really, really incredible. And I know Jerry Moe started it many years ago, but it was really big at Betty Ford. And we talked about that on the podcast with him, and the impact that it had. And I think that every treatment center that should be focusing on family and bringing a children's program in would be an unbelievable thing, because not everybody can afford to fly across the country and stay in a hotel either. I want to go back to the Casa Flores program, because I just found out that my stepson is an addictionologist in Michigan, and we were just looking at the federal programs that are being slaughtered for substance abuse and mental health now. And as a result, their programs are shutting down. And in Michigan, in Ann Arbor area, there was a program, I believe it was outpatient, for pregnant women, and that's closing or has closed. So there are not options for pregnant women, and that was federally funded, state funded, and no longer able to stay, in a very short period of time. These programs are no longer going to exist. So I plead to anyone who can give money to this program to keep it alive, because as we're talking about, the generational changes that can occur. And as you know, because you've referred me to her, Nikki Tartell was on my podcast and aired just a few weeks ago an incredible story about survival, and not only survival, but just a beautiful recovery and a beautiful work that she's doing now, and 3 beautiful children. So it's possible, and I just want to continue to give hope and possibility. And for those that have the desire or passion and financial ability to give to the program, to give to these programs. If it's not Casa Flores, to the Patriots or to the Children's. But the fact is that you have 3 years of funding for that is amazing.
And a lot, and we will, especially Casa Flores, continues to need funding, but there are babies that got to be born and be with their moms because people gave to that. I told we have our foundation as a chief philanthropy officer and Turner, and I was talking to him and I said, I historically in my life have been so awkward when it came to ever talking about money that when I was in pastoral ministry on staff, I was one of 7 pastors on staff at a big church, I would not want to pray before the offering because I don't like talking about money. And I'll tell you that today, with what I get to see right out my window every day, I will dance down 45th Street in a pink tutu if raise money for this, because it is moms and babies and families who have a chance and otherwise would not.
Sure. Families and keeping them with them instead of in adoption or fostering and potential adoption because the mother can't get things together because there is just no relief for anything. There's so many things that are needed to rebuild for a woman who doesn't have anything. So when you talk about your pastoral experience, I just started studying prayer and what prayer does to the brain. And just briefly touched on it. And something came up called, that I hadn't heard this term, neurotheology, an interdisciplinary field that explores the relationship between the brain and religious or spiritual experiences, aiming to understand the neurological basis of such experiences through scientific methods like brain imaging. So I would love to have that conversation because anybody can pray and meditate to change their brain. What are your thoughts on this?
It's funny. Our chaplain here, I came here 21 years ago to be the chaplain, but now we have a chaplain, Lance Woodley, and that's actually one of his areas of not only interest but of specialization and study. And I also, as a scientist and as all of the above, I love that question. So, one of the things that if you'd have met me 30 years ago, I had lots of answers about what, theology and the universe. And I had lots of answers. 30 years later, I have very, very, very few answers. And I am way, way more grateful for the mystery. So there are things that, there have been many, many studies, and there have been studies that have, I don't want people to get confused because there have been studies in the past that people will talk about looking at trying to validate some supernatural thing, right? So I'm going to do a study on whether or not, 50 people praying for you affects the relative, what'll happen to your cancer. And those studies all found, generally found nothing conclusive. Neurotheology, right, is different. It's actually exactly what you said. It's looking at what do things like prayer, meditation, what do things like neurotheology looks at the phenomena of engaging in gratitude? What did these things, do they have an impact on the brain and on the body? And there is a growing body of evidence that they very clearly do. They have a significant impact on the brain, an immediate impact on the brain. You can see it through brain scanning and imaging. There were studies maybe 10 years ago, a little longer, that looked at blood flow in the brain during meditation and prayer using SPECT scanning. What we know is that these things really do have observable positive effects. And the beauty of why I've really just fallen in love with 12-step spirituality, because it it takes out the need to try to figure out all of the theological things just right. And it says, what have we observed? Because all these things, all that when we're finding the studies and the MRIs and the SPECT scans and all of these things, all they're doing really is confirming what people in 12-step communities and others have been observing for a century. And so it is, regardless of whether or not someone has a specific theology, what we know is that if they can connect mindfully to something that is greater than themselves, that we can see a change in the brain, we can see changes in the body. The newest thing that is going to be really interesting is there are some studies on the microbiome and the impact of prayer and meditation on the microbiome. And I don't know that there's anything published yet. I'm gonna have to check after this now. But that's what we're going to see very, very soon. So what we know is that if I can connect to something greater than myself for 1 minute, for a second, for a little bit, it changes my state of being, and it moves me from that sympathetic fight or flight to a parasympathetic rest and relax. And that is so important because, first of all, our society has most of us revving the engine all the time. And if someone has been involved in active addiction, then their engine is revving all the time. And guess what their family's engine is doing? Revving all the time. So by the time we meet people, there is this intense level of the engine's been revving all the time. So what happens if you rev your car engine all the time? It's going to overheat, it's going to blow up. And that's what happens to us. So there has to be a balance. And so prayer, meditation, engaging in mindful activities, mindful connection to nature, of these things help to slow that engine down a little bit and contributes to our ability to be healthy and balanced.
Sure. And you're talking about the first responders. The best thing for them that would be able to take that moment, or anyone actually, but for them, and after they've done their round of something, coming back and being able to take the moment to slow down, meditate, pray. And as you talk about the 12 steps, the first thing that happens in any 12-step meeting is the serenity prayer. And the close is the serenity prayer. So being able to have that with a group of people is pretty powerful.
It's amazing, no matter how fancy or technical we get. And I'm a health scientist. I love science and I love all that. But it is the simple things that make the biggest difference.
Sure. I mean, we could spend a lot of money on a lot of things, but going back to what is it that we can do daily? And that's one of the things of learning, for someone to learn in their treatment, in their ongoing recovery, is they're not going to have that intensive treatment forever. And what can they do for themselves, by themselves, or with other people in the community? And that's the biggest strength for someone in long-term recovery, is to be able to have that connection to, as you say, something bigger than them. And be able to have that practice for themselves. If they can't get a 12-step meeting, then practice prayer and meditation and gratitude. And a gratitude journal is just pretty amazing every day.
Right.
Anything else that you, whether it's spirituality and or otherwise, that all the years that you've been working in this field, that you've seen the greatest success for people and families?
So, that's a big one. And one of the things, it really is, in the years I've been here, I get to see, everything you can imagine, from people really struggling, people dying, to people getting their lives back, to people flourishing. For me, when people make a spiritual connection, when that happens, that seems to me to be the most significant difference between those who continue to just struggle and those who really find true recovery. It's an interesting thing. When I came here many years ago, I was told that I would find that. People said, you're going to see that those who really are coming back and you're telling you they're loving life, that they are the people who find a connection with something greater than themselves. And I got to say, it has been about the rightest thing I've ever been told. I ask people a lot of questions. I think as a therapist, the most important question I ask anybody is, what do you want? And I'm one of those really obnoxious therapists, because I'll just ask that and then just let people sit in it. And they'll say, well, what do you mean? What do I want? What do I want from this session? What do I want from this place? What do I want? And I'll just let them sit in. And ultimately, what I mean is what do you want? Big picture, what do you want? And most people will say, I just want to be happy. And what I have found is that is not even close to what most people want. That most people, what they really want is peace. And in fact, they tend to be very good at happy. I work with a lot of people that we work with we work with people who are doctors and lawyers and PhDs, and we work with businessmen. They're very successful. Happy, the word happy comes from an old English word, hap. It just means luck. Happy means I feel good based on my external circumstances. Right. And there's nothing wrong with that. If something good happens, you feel happy. But the problem is that becomes our life's pursuit. I've got to find the circumstance. I got to make my circumstances make me happy. And so people end up chasing their tail, because whatever you think will make you happy probably will for 90 seconds.
Yeah, there's a lot of studies that have shown that the chase that you have in life, you get someplace and like, okay, there's more. I want more, and to keep chasing that, it's just it gives you a satisfaction for a brief period of time, and then there's something more that is felt underneath. And you're right that the ability to have peace. People who are dying can have peace. People who are, in a wheelchair can have peace. And then people in a wheelchair can have struggles. And the same thing with dying. People struggle with that all the time. But to find that peace within themselves, and the closer they can in earlier life, which is really, it's like, where do you find that, and everybody's trying to figure that out. And really, I think it's as simple as things is, okay, can we take the time to pray, to meditate, to be grateful? And that will bring us peace for that day, and then repeat it the next day and repeat it the next day. I had someone on my podcast, it's going to air on Tuesday, actually. He is in recovery. He's an Irishman that lives in Los Angeles and Ireland, both going back and forth. And he actually, Bob Doyle, actually was sober for a year when he met him. And he said, I really am trying to, I wanted to drink last night, and I just don't know how to get past this day. He said, just do 1 month. And then he kept 1 month later, just do one more month, just month to month. And I know many times it's day to day, but if you want to think bigger, month to month, and now it's 8.5 years for him, because he's been able to continue on that purposeful, balanced life for himself. And everybody needs to find their own way to balance that, I guess. But there are tools that we can all have.
I couldn't agree more. And that's the difference for me. The what we're really looking for is we're looking for that peace. where I can say there are things in my life I'm not happy about, but I'm okay. I'm anchored. I'm whole. I don't, need something to fix me. And the way to peace is through the disciplines of a healthy, connected spirituality. And it doesn't have to be religious. It can be if you want, but it doesn't by any stretch have to be.
Right.
You're right on that. From my experience, what makes the difference is people who develop that spiritual connection, because that's the path to peace.
Sure. And God doesn't have to be religion, nor is it religion. Religion is a separate entity in itself. So
that's right.
You can find God in the church or in the synagogue, but it doesn't mean that that's the only place God is. God is everywhere, if you want to believe that for yourself. Right. And God could be anything for yourself. So, well, this has been great. I love these conversations. I knew that I could have a theologian have these conversations with me. And would love to, what is your last parting thoughts as we leave today?
I ask that on my own podcast every time, and I didn't even think about that.
I would think that you would.
Now I know how uncomfortable. We're in a tough time. Our country's in a tough time. Our world's in a tough time. If you see me on the street, be kind. And if it's not me, be kind.
Yeah.
That's the only word I would have for today.
Thank you. I'm going to call you John instead of Dr. Dyben now. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, because yes, we are in trouble, and I get emotional in all of these podcasts. I really appreciate you and any kindness that we can give to anyone, because we don't know what everyone else is going through. So thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you, and I love what Hanley's doing, and very, very proud to know all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. We feel the same.
Thank you for joining the conversation today. If you are seeking help for yourself or a loved one, please reach out to our Feinberg Consulting team at 248-538-5425. That's 248-538-5425, and check out our website at feinbergcare.com. I'm grateful for our guests and all who have joined us today. Make sure you follow us on Apple, Spotify, or anywhere you listen to podcasts.